Hello and welcome to the Patron Saints of Pop Culture podcast. I'm Miguel Covarrubias.
And I am Kathy Covarrubias. And today, let's talk about Stranger Things 3.
Spoiler alert if you've not yet caught this. It did come out on July 4th, which I learned yesterday was not the 5th month of the year.
No.
And so it's been a few months, but it's been out. Some people may not have had time to catch it because they have toddlers.
I'm pretty sure everybody's seen it by now.
Okay. So what we're going to talk about, and we decided to kind of give you a rundown right at the beginning here, just so that we can, let you guys know what to expect and what's coming up in the podcast episode. Today we're going to talk about how life moves pretty fast, and I've got a special quote for you coming up.
I also, obviously will be talking, because that's what I do. I will be talking about the struggles of growing up.
All right. And then we are going to reveal our saints of this season.
And then, of course, we'll give you a quick closing and tell you how you can go ahead and get a hold of us if you want to reach out.
Great. Let's jump into our summary and review. My summary of this season, this one is a difficult one to summarize because it kind of branched out in a couple of different ways. Mm-hmm. But it did come back together again. We're going to go with the baseline plot, which kind of defines all three seasons this far, I think, which is shady organization. This time it is the Russian government. Opens the portal to the Upside Down, and things go awry when one of the beasts from the Upside Down crosses over into our realm. The kids try to stop it.
Okay. All right, so I will focus, I guess, more on Nancy and Jonathan's storyline. So they are now interns at the local newspaper. Nancy gets this big story and she tries to pitch it to them and they're like, haha, you're a girl, you can't do anything. And then she gets all mad and she's like, I'm going to prove them wrong because I'm a working woman. And she goes and she investigates and she finds this big old conspiracy thing that has to do with zombies and fertilizer. And then she meets up with the main storyline and she helps defeat the monster.
Okay.
Right? I'm not wrong.
No, you're not wrong. It just, I think it's too much for a summary. We're trying to summarize.
Well, that was one storyline summary.
Okay. All right. I'll give that to you. I really did like this more than the other two seasons of Stranger Things thus far. Granted, you do need to watch them to appreciate Stranger Things 3.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like the second season hit that slump where, like, including that one episode where you went off with the other Powards and 11, and it was just...
They were trying to do a spin-off, kind of testing, you could tell, and yeah.
It was just kind of like, we like this show, though. You guys still haven't, unpacked a lot of this show yet. Mm-hmm. Don't try to put another thing out there.
Yeah. Well, obviously, they realized their mistake because those kids were not mentioned at all.
They don't even exist now.
No,
so.
They just don't happen at all this season. And I agree with you when you said that you have to watch the first two seasons, because I actually had a coworker who just jumped into season 3 without watching the other two. And she's like, I'm so confused. What's going on? Why is this girl so special? And blah, blah, blah. So you definitely need to watch. Just like every other TV show, you need to watch the other seasons first.
Well, and Netflix is now starting to do that introduction to the show at the very beginning, like a couple of minutes of saying, this is what you missed kind of thing.
Or like just to jog your memory.
Yeah.
This is what happened.
So, overall, I did like it. I liked the 80s nostalgia stuff because it's a lot of stuff that I remembered, including Dawn of the Dead.
Malls.
Like there was a lot of that Easter egg stuff that was thrown in there that was like, oh, I get that. And, it was kind of like, it makes me appreciate it a little bit more because I know that even if you didn't get it, that you would have been like, oh, okay, I get it.
I also think it's funny how, like, obviously Coke was a big sponsor. Yeah. And
New Coke.
In the 80s, when a beverage sponsor was, like, clearly one of your larger sponsors, like, there was always a can of that drink in every single scene. And Stranger Things really delivered on that 80s trope, too. So that in itself is an Easter egg.
Oh, and making sure that the Coke is always facing towards the camera.
Yep.
So it was there. All right, your review?
Okay, so I also really enjoyed it. I, too, like this better than the second season. I would say that it's on par with season 1. Of course, we don't have as much mystery, I think, compared to season 1, because season 1, like, everything was brand new. So everything was a mystery. Here, we were able to explore more of the human aspects of the characters, more than just, like, what's mysterious about them. So I really enjoyed getting to view that.
Now that you brought that up, I think that is kind of a season 3 thing that shows really tend to do, is they delve more into the characters, is they start to flesh them out a little bit more.
Once they realize that, our audience is going to stay.
Yeah. We just discussed The Magician season 3, which it was
We didn't just
fantastic.
discuss it. It was like months ago.
Well, yeah, it was like February.
Yes.
So
not just.
Well, it was this year. It was this season in our podcast. So
okay, I'll give that to you.
So, it was a lot of that was more building the characters and removing them from their book counterparts, which I haven't seen season 4 yet of The Magicians, and I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. We have seen a lot of spoilers on Instagram, and you guys are horrible about that. So, try to keep the spoilers to a minimum, I guess, for us. I don't know.
Well, to be fair, it's been out for a while.
Yeah.
So, and
the
it's not
finale
like
aired like months ago. So,
and it's not like it's on a streaming service right now for us to watch. So,
Netflix, get season 4 already. It's going to be like December by the time they actually get it.
Yep.
So, speaking of 80s nostalgia, I'm going to go with a quote from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And I think this quote kind of encapsulates for me the themes of season 3 that really stood out to me. And it is, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop to look around, you might miss it. Honestly, I resonated so much. Each of the characters really has this moment where they're getting stuck somewhere, kind of either in the past, the present, or the future. And for me, as somebody who has spent the majority of this past year trying to figure out who I am, and who I am just purely in the moment, purely in the now, rather than in the past, in the future, or distracted by some other thing that I really can't do anything about, this was something that made season 3 so much better for me. One of the things that I noticed, especially for Will, was the getting stuck in the past. And you can see this, oh my gosh, in that most depressing scene of the entire season when he's tearing down Castle Byers. Like, it was heartbreaking because you know that's a part of yourself too, is you're having to leave yourself behind. And it's depressing because you don't want to. There's still parts of your childhood that you want to hold on to.
It's kind of like an Up when her, islands deteriorate and fall down, and she has to rebuild her new islands. This is his, physical version of that.
Inside Out, you mean?
That's what I meant. What did I say?
You said Up.
Up? Oh, my gosh. I meant Inside Out.
That's why I'm like, her?
It's okay.
You're talking about Kevin? So
it's a direction.
It is a direction.
The names of each movie is a direction.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
All right. And I think that, Will kind of got stuck there, and it was hard for him to move on, especially because he missed some of his childhood. He was gone for 6 months, was it? Or, a couple of...
It was a while.
It was a couple of months that he was in the Upside Down. And life kind of moved on without him. You saw this in season 2 when he was possessed by the Mind Flayer, that, he still wasn't in control, and he was still feeling that life was moving on around him, and he wanted to hold on to just that night that he got taken when he was playing Dungeons and Dragons with his friends, and it hasn't been the same since. Mm-hmm. And it's so depressing because he's realizing, I can't go back. I can't go back to that moment. I can't go back to who I was.
And I can't force people to, go back with me.
Was there something for you that you couldn't hold on to, that you want to hold on to, but you just couldn't?
Peter as a baby.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh. Even now that he is a toddler on the verge of being a child, I can still kind of hold him in my arms sometimes, especially after a bath when he's all wrapped up in his towel and, we're all snuggling. Mm-hmm. I'm just there's going to be a time when we're not going to be able to do this anymore. And, oh my gosh, it hurts so bad.
I know. Oh, yesterday it came up in our memories because you tagged me as well. Pictures from him when he was only a few months old, and he was so chunky, and mm-hmm. with his at the time favorite stuffy, which was it's a stuffed monkey,
mm-hmm. named Monkey.
Named Monkey.
He's very original in his naming.
Well, he is with some, the dog is Podunk for some reason.
I don't know,
but with Monkey, and he's biting the nose of Monkey, and it's just so adorable. And I'm he's this kid who thinks butt jokes are funny. And it goes on so quickly that mm-hmm. My fears are coming to light that, I fear that if I blink, he's going to be 13 and not like any of this kid stuff anymore. And it kills me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is that what you want to hold on to?
Yeah, that and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because that was big for my brother and I, and just, yeah. Well, I was thinking about it when we watched the original Aladdin a few days ago with Peter.
And I realized that I have the whole entire thing memorized.
You have it memorized. I wore out my grandmother's VHS of it. So, the reason why I brought it up is because my brother and I, we would sit there and play it on my grandmother's VCR and sit there and play with our Ninja Turtles, making up these scenes and acting out the scenes from Aladdin with our Ninja Turtles. And I just want to go back to that, in a way that I wish I could be just able to sit there and play and not be consumed with stuff from the present, the worries of the present or stuff that's going to happen in the future. Yeah.
Bills.
Exactly. Welcome to being an adult. Speaking of being consumed by worries of the present, of course, the adults, you have Hopper and Joyce. That date moment with Joyce where she completely misses it. Mm-hmm. And you can, Hopper is sending the signals. He's interested.
Yeah, he put on his best shirt and undid an extra button.
And he's waiting for her. He waited for over an hour, sitting there waiting for her. And this is the moment where, before, when he's asking her to go to dinner with him, he's sending all of the signals. He's mm-hmm. saying, look, I'm interested.
Yeah. We're going to a nice place. This isn't just, let's go to a cafe and, just talk. This is clearly something different, something more special. I don't know how much clearer he needed to be besides, I want to date you. I want you to be my girlfriend.
And I think Joyce is more concerned with what's going on in the store, that it's kind of going under and, mm-hmm. The rest of the town is kind of losing to the mall. Yeah,
those darn malls.
Yeah, I know. Now everything is losing to Amazon mm-hmm. or the internet. But also in the reverse, you have Hopper, who just completely misses the point with the talk. It was that now I'm not specifically talking about writing it out. That was great because then we got the full emotional payoff at the end of the season mm-hmm. with that scene with the underscore of the Peter Gabriel cover of Hero, which, like, oh, I have it on my Spotify playlist for work, and it, like, brings me to tears every time I'm like, it comes on. I'm like,
Oh, boy.
God. But it's so good. Primarily because I'm like David Bowie at the same time, thinking about David Bowie and like listening to that and just like, the words are poignant when they're sung in this way. And like, it's kind of it's melancholic, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. But besides bills, what consumes you so much that you lose sight of the present? You lose sight of what's right in front of you.
Well, right now it's The Sims.
Okay.
Well, right?
Yeah.
So I have avoided The Sims for a very long time. And then just recently I started playing The Sims and now I can't stop.
It's true. And in fact, she's probably going to want to kick me off of editing.
No, I'm told myself already, you have to edit. I can do something else.
Okay.
It's okay.
Because we'll be releasing this in probably an hour from now. So, like right before we go to bed.
Yeah, so I won't be able to play again tonight.
Yeah.
Even though I really want to redecorate, but that's okay.
And for me, especially, I think for me is definitely with bills and just consuming with... I want people to kind of like my art, which... is silly. I'm doing it just for me, and even if nobody else likes it, I should know that at least I put something out there. You know, at least I did something, and you know, if people don't like it, who cares? At least I did it, and not many people can say that.
Yep.
And you know, life is short. I'm not going to just hoard my stuff for whoever finds it after I'm dead.
Yeah.
So. I think that's something that consumes me. It keeps me from seeing what's right here in front of me. Mm-hmm. Keeps me from seeing my family, from, you know, these things that, like, I should just write. I should just, you know, make this art. And if somebody likes it, great. But, you know, it's for me.
Yeah.
And then there's that getting ahead of yourself, which so many of us do. We want something more than what we have.
And we tend to jump into things in inappropriate ways and times.
Exactly. Like Nancy and her job is, you know, jumping into being a full-fledged reporter. And granted, there is that glass ceiling there. It's hard for her to break into it because she's a woman, but there's also the need to pay your dues. Like, there's so many of us that want to just, you know, break through and have our break to really make it somewhere without having to put in the work, which I don't know if any of you have noticed, but we've done almost 150 episodes of this podcast and we have not made our break yet. So,
but again, it's for us.
It's for us. And you know, if somebody likes it, great. I hope somebody gets something from this. Mm-hmm. But nobody has to. That's the point. Yeah.
Well, also, too, I think Nancy is being a little bit more pushy about it because she realizes it's, you know, her misogynistic boss and workplace is holding her back. And the only way that she can actually get in their, like, I don't know, sight and show her talents is by doing these reckless things.
Yeah, it's to jump beyond her borders. Mm-hmm. And I get that. I do. But it's also jumping. It's also living too far ahead of yourself. That's the way I'm going to put it. Is living too far ahead of yourself. This is the same with Mike. Is he's wanting this relationship with 11 that's much more grown up than he is. He's, 13 years old, and they're already boyfriend and girlfriend like they're 18, 19, 20. Which, that's not okay. That's growing up way too quickly. That's, you know, putting yourself ahead of yourself. Be a kid while you're still a kid.
I totally macked with somebody when I was 13. So.
Well, macking is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, like, having the door closed, and that's what you're... all that you're doing is just spending time with them, not with your friends, is being so consumed with the relationship rather than everything else.
Well, you have to give them a little bit of a break. They are 13 and
Yes.
hormones kind of get
Hormones
the best of
get
you.
the best of you. Yes, I know.
Okay.
I'm a former youth minister. That's what I studied. I studied adolescent development. I know how teenagers work. The problem is he's growing up way too, and we all do this. Is we see the future more than we see the present. And this is what I did as a youth minister, is I was always thinking ahead. I was always making sure that I thought about, okay, what's going to happen next week, instead of actually being there in the moment that week. Is, okay, how do I move forward from here? Rather than, let's triage the situation. Let's make sure that this situation is okay before we move on. I think that hindered me in a lot of ways, but it also helped me to be prepared for things. And so, 6 to some, half dozen to the other. So, I can see the pros and cons of it, but I don't really necessarily think it's good for anybody to live their full life that way. Can you get ahead of yourself sometimes? How do you get ahead of yourself?
Yes. It's been a minute since I've gotten ahead of myself. I think most recently when it comes to travel plans, I can get ahead of myself.
Yeah.
And I'm the type of person that when I'm traveling somewhere, even if it's someplace that I'm familiar with, I have to write things down like, we're doing this on this day, this on this day, this on this day, and we have to be home by this time on this day, so then we can go ahead and, have dinner with so-and-so. No, he's laughing because it's true.
No, I'm laughing because it's true, and it annoys you to all hell that I am much the opposite. That I'm just like, we'll do something.
Well, my thing is, when I go back home, there is so many people who want to see me that I have to do it that way. I have to schedule things out so people can see me. That's just my life.
Okay.
You're just jealous that I have people who want to see me.
Well, and like I said, I do get ahead of myself sometimes too. And those things did annoy you as well, because it was very much taking me away from times with you. I was more consumed with distractions. I was more consumed with something in the past, or I was more consumed with what's coming up in the future, that I just completely missed out on what was going on here and now. So that was the theme that stuck out to me the most. What stuck out to you?
That was a very generic transition, but I liked it. As I said at the beginning of the show, I'm going to be talking about the struggles of growing up, something we have all had to deal with if you are an adult, or are dealing with even though you are an adult. Because let's face it, we, especially millennials, hey, I brought it up, you didn't.
Yeah, that's true.
As we're having some problems in this area, a lot of us are. So, with Will, going back to Stranger Things, I put Will's millennial dilemma as my thing because I thought that was pretty funny. But Will and millennials now have, and even some like young Gen Xers, have this love of games, love of board games. Like there's, I don't know, just like a nostalgic kind of aspect to it.
Well, all of the kids are Gen Xers because they were born in the 70s.
Yep, you're right. I really like games because you sit down and it's team building. You get to use your brain. You get to use up time if you're bored. There's just so many different things that games are really, really good for. And so I can see the appeal. And so do a lot of other people our age as well, too. We like to have fun. Like I said, it's the bonding. And yeah, there's a little bit of childness to it. We get competitive and we get upset when we think somebody's cheating, or if somebody just for some reason gets all of the good cards all the time and we can't figure out why we can't win.
Kathy.
Hey, I may or may not have cried once or twice from being frustrated about losing games.
I know.
And also, too, I think another reason why millennials like board games is because in like the grand scheme of things, they're cheap. I mean, the initial purchase of them might not be very cheap because there's some board games out there that can even be over $100 to purchase.
Gloomhaven, we're looking at you.
But once you purchase them, it has like endless playing ability. You know, it's not like you go and buy a ticket and you just see like one show. With board games, you can play over and over and over again. And you can also play with different people, which also gives you different experiences playing the game as well too. So the whole point is that we like to keep these kinds of things around. Even though they are kind of childish, a lot of people still enjoy these games because it brings back good memories and creates new memories and gives us the potential of forming new memories down the line in the future.
Exactly.
So what is your favorite game now and as a kid?
Ooh, as a kid. Good question. I don't know. As a kid, there were a lot of different... Stratego. Stratego was my favorite as a kid.
You liked Stratego.
Why?
It's okay.
Okay. I liked Stratego as a kid, though my mom never bought it, so it was always at school that I got to play it. My favorite now is definitely Betrayal at House on the Hill, which I don't get to play at all because it is a 3-person or more board game, and you have to have somebody who's okay with the fact that a rule book is more than 2 pages.
But it's a lot of fun, and you basically play a different game every time you play. So
they have a legacy one out now, which is expensive, but it's supposed to build on each time that you play it. So that's what I'm intrigued by the legacy games, but I'm also like, I don't have a gaming group that I game with often enough that it's worth the purchase.
Exactly. Yep. So for me as a kid, oh gosh, we played so many board games. I think my favorite game that I played the most would probably be the Harry Potter CNETs. They are very worn. I actually purchased multiple versions of them so I could keep up with them. And then now, I think my most recent, my favorite board game now, which we've only played through once, but I'm trying to get you to play through it again, is the Battle of Hogwarts.
Yes.
Yes. Again, it is kind of legacy-ish, but there is an ending to it. But it's a lot of fun. So I like Harry Potter games. Can you tell?
Yes.
That's okay, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
And then also, too, a big part of growing up that I'm sure most of us have gone through is that boring retail job. The very first job that we had. Well, I guess it didn't have to be retail. It could have been just some kind of service, kind of service industry, like Scoops Ahoy, for example. And I am just going to argue that having a job in high school is actually really good for you to do. It is, and actually I have a study to back that up.
Yep.
So this study was actually done by the Employment Policies Institute. And I'm just going to summarize it real quick. So basically, if you have a high school job, your potential for earning throughout your life is actually a lot higher than people who don't get a job until after they're done with school. Because you have that job experience already under your belt when you go into the professional workplace. And so it's a little bit easier to actually get a job.
Yeah. I would anecdotally agree with that.
Also, too, they say that people who have a job in high school tend to be more satisfied with their current place of employment as an adult versus those people who just went into the workplace right after they were done with college or high school. Which, again, anecdotally, I think we can agree. Because we all have that one person at work who is very brand new, never had a job before, complains about everything, and you're just thinking to yourself, man, if you were working at, the diner down the street, you wouldn't be able to have all these same benefits. So you just need to shut your mouth.
Yeah, that's true.
And then also, too, another struggle of growing up, which we saw this season, too, and something that us as adults, I'm sure, have all gone through, is the fact that friends move apart, whether that be physically move apart or just kind of slowly over time just drift apart.
Well, and it can be sudden as well, as we talked about last week with Dead to Me. Like, when you're going through a traumatic event, some people just won't understand and won't understand your healing process.
Yeah.
So...
And it doesn't have to be a bad thing. I know it sounds very sad because it is very sad. But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it just happens and you don't realize it happened until you look back and you're like, I haven't talked to, Susie for years. And I'm like, it wasn't that we had a fight or anything. Susie's a metaphorical person, by the way. It's just that time went on. She did something else. I went down another path and it just kind of faded. And that's okay. But it can still be very isolating, and sometimes it can still feel personal, even though it isn't necessarily.
Yeah. Well, there are people that I have unfriended on Facebook recently that I'm just like, I haven't talked to you in over a year. I don't have your number. I can't text you happy birthday. I don't want to say happy birthday on your Facebook page because that's not me anymore. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to have a personal relationship with somebody that it's not virtual anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
And sometimes when it comes to the Facebook happy birthdays,
they're disingenuous.
Yeah, disingenuous, and they're very surface level, and I'm very notorious for not saying happy birthday because if I just don't feel like I am going to reach out to you anyway, like in a text message to tell you happy birthday, I'm not going to put it on your Facebook wall.
Yeah.
That's just me. And it's okay if your friend and you go into different groups. But just a piece of advice, for all you folks out there who are willing to take advice. If a friend reaches out to you, please answer. Or if you can't answer, please, call them back or even just text them back and say, hey, what's up? I saw you called.
Yeah.
Even if it's somebody that maybe you did have a really bad falling out with and you haven't heard from them in a couple of years, you never know what they might need or might want to say. So I just encourage you to do that, to answer their call.
It's part of the recovery process. It's part of that making amends. And, the 12-step programs have that part mm-hmm. right, I think, is definitely that making amends for your past mistakes, primarily because life is short.
Yeah. And
you can't let the guilt from whatever it is, and I know that we're going to carry that guilt for whatever we've done for the rest of our lives, but we also need to, have a way to say, hey, at least I've worked on making up for it.
Exactly. And at that point in time, there's nothing else that you can do. You've done what you can, so you just got to give it to the universe.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it, just kind of, I would say let go, but it's not really letting go because if that person does reach back out to you, I would hope that you would, again, answer the call that they didn't give you. Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in high school, did you feel like your friends were leaving you behind?
Yes.
Yeah?
Well, it was mostly me because I moved halfway through high school. Though there were those people who I did make friends with that ended up, graduating or going off to college and doing their own things before I did. And, I felt like I was being left behind. And it's part of growing up. It's part of that, feeling like life has already passed you by, that you're not taking full advantage of what you have in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, these are the themes that really stuck out to both of us, I think, in this season. How about you?
Yeah. So, yes. Well, mine wasn't necessarily like friends leaving me behind. It was more like friends, I don't know, being bored and choosing somebody to like pick on,
Yeah.
you know? And I feel like because of what happened in high school, like I don't really have any interest in seeing a lot of the people that I was good friends with in high school. But there are people who I knew in high school that because of Facebook, I feel a little bit closer to that I would want to see. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, like, we weren't necessarily good friends, but we were more acquaintances. But I would rather see them than see the people that I was good friends with. Just because I felt like I was used as a joke punching bag at one point in time. So, yeah, I know. How do we bring it up from here, Miguel?
Well, let's talk about our Saints of the season. So our Saints of the season, I am going to elect Erica Sinclair as my saint for the season, primarily because that girl is awesome.
Very sassy, very smart.
Yes. Two miracles that I am going to say that she performed were the first one would be learning to love her nerd self as well. That yes, she's smart. Yes, she's like just the sassy like social butterfly and everything else. But she also has that nerd aspect to her, which Dustin brings out a little bit, and she makes fun of him for it. But he's like,
You're a
nerd too. And so she learns to accept that and love that in herself. The second miracle that I'm going to give a tribute to her is her calling out other people on their bullshit.
Yes.
And I think that's just incredible. And this goes along with Chris from last week, that being able to speak truth in those situations is a miracle.
Well, especially when it comes from the mouths of children,
Yeah.
like I feel like people, when a child calls you out on your bullshit, that it's more shocking than if an adult does, because children tend to be a little bit more truthful and just lay out the facts when it comes to that kind of stuff, especially if they don't really have a personal relationship with you. So, out of the mouths of babes is what they say.
Yeah.
Yep. So my saint is going to be Nancy. Well, obviously, because she went into a male-dominated industry. First of all, if you're going to go into journalism, why are you going in there straight out of high school?
Yeah, as an intern.
Yes.
Hoping to become something more.
Well, to be fair, at one point in time, being an intern was a legitimate way to actually get into an industry.
Yeah.
That is the case now for some industries, like the fashion industry, or like apprenticeships for plumbing and that kind of stuff. But the vast majority of the workforce, it's just an internship isn't going to get you anywhere.
Well, it's skilled labor. It's apprenticeship and experience is important. Other places, like if you're interning for like a media conglomerate, all you're going to be doing is getting coffee and making, scheduling appointments, stuff like that.
Yeah. And don't even get me started on the whole how internships are basically like free labor and how people are completely exploiting college kids, but that's a different story.
Let's focus on Nancy. What did she do to earn your sainthood?
So, well, like I said, she went into an industry very gung-ho, like, I'm going to be an intern and I'm going to do everything that I can to prove my worth. And boy, does she. I mean, she goes into a creepy-ass basement, sees this weird-ass rat, and, is, okay with it. And it's like, this is our story.
Yeah.
And then, too, she... her relationship with Jonathan is very mature for their age. But then again, in the 80s, people tended to have a little bit more mature relationships, I guess, because they were expected to get married sooner than now.
Well, not as many distractions as there is now.
True, yeah. But I also have to give her kudos because just from season 1 to now, she's matured so much. And she actually had a conversation with her mom, a good conversation about what she needed to do in her job and why it was so difficult. And that can be hard to fess up to your mom. Like, hey, mom, I need real advice, not just, hey, I have a fever, what should I do? But I need like real grown up adult advice.
Yeah. All right. So let people know how to get a hold of us so that they can tell us their saints of the season.
All right. So you can get a hold of us primarily on Facebook and Instagram at Patron Saints of Pop Culture. Also, we have the website at patronsaintsofpopculture.org.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I did it.
Good job.
Yay!
And if you have anything else to say about that, as well as taking a moment for our fallen heroes right now, just give a moment for Barb, Bob, and Alexi.
Mm-hmm. And then also Harper.
Hopper may or may not be dead. So
that's why
we'll see.
You guys didn't see, but I had the hand wave.
The hand wave, yeah. So with all of that being said, we invite you to come and join the conversation.
Bye.
Yourself a favor.